What are the chances that you're going to have that same injury again and again, especially as you get older?
Pretty good. You have about a 90% chance of re-injuring the same structure.
How do you prevent that then?
Well, you prevent it by never getting hurt in the first place by doing all the things that we've told you to do. But then if you do become injured, first primarily is to control the inflammatory process. And now we can go down this rabbit hole. It's a neuromuscular thing. Firing muscles so that when you get out there and you start moving through space in an uncontrolled manner, you can control your center of gravity. When I started in sports medicine, your team physician was an orthopedic surgeon. And he did everything. If it was a foot or ankle, it was that guy. The knee, it was the same guy. The hip, it was the same guy. The hand, wrist, or shoulder, same guy. Not like that anymore.
What are some great warm-up exercises then for tennis, pickleball, golf?
Let's go back a step. Before we get to that point, we've done the lacrosse ball,
Yep.
stretch the hip flex, stretch the hamstring, activate the glute.
Yep.
In your world, say it enough times and they'll get it.
I just want to sort of finish up a little bit on recovery. We talked about pushing ourselves. We talked about the need to warm up, and we'll talk about that much more in the podcast. What should we be doing after we've played? Welcome to GB Gents, the podcast where we help active adults stay in the game healthy, strong, and injury-free. I'm Steve Masterson of Nobol, a California-based company with a simple mission: keeping active adults active. Today, we're diving into a topic that matters to anyone who loves lifetime sports, like tennis, pickleball, or golf. Common injuries and how to prevent them. Joining me here is someone who knows better than anyone, Gary Vitti, former head athletic trainer for the Los Angeles Lakers with decades of experience keeping elite athletes at the top of their game. Gary's here to share his insights on why injuries happen, what you can do to prevent them, and how smart warm-up and recovery routines for the sport you love, be that on the court, the course, or the field, can make all the difference. At Nobol, we believe prevention is the best medicine. That's why we design innovative warm-up and recovery devices to help you stay active and avoid injuries. And today, Gary will explain why these routines are essential for anyone who wants to keep playing for life. So let's get started. Gary, thanks for being here and welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. And I appreciate what Nobol's trying to do here by creating this platform to help active people remain active.
Thanks, Gary. So we talked about lifetime sports at the beginning. So first of all, Gary, could you tell me what are lifetime sports and why are they so rewarding?
I guess if I had to define lifetime sports, I would say something like, as it sounds, and it's something you can do for the rest of your life. But why? Why are these particular sports indicative of active people wanting to remain active? And so usually a lifetime sport is, once again, something you can do for your lifetime at any level of ability. And that usually ties into, a non-contact sport, low impact sport, things that you can do at a young age, a middle age, or an old age. Okay. And the longer you do it and the more active that you can remain, the better off you're going to be.
So I read about and I see a lot of people taking up pickleball. So is pickleball a lifetime sport?
Yes, of course. Pickleball is a lifetime sport, but it doesn't come without injuries. And some of the injuries are very specific to pickleball. And a bunch of orthopods that I know out there are referring to it as an annuity for them. Because very competitive, probably former tennis players that can't move around the tennis court like they used to, find that they can get that thrill of victory, from pickleball. But it does come with some issues that we can talk about at some point.
So what's the difference between something like tennis or pickleball and weight training?
Well, there's the movement that's involved. I mean, weight training is generally you're stationary, and you're bringing your limbs through a range of motion, okay, with resistance. But when you're speaking of a sport, you're talking about movement in different directions and in different planes.
Okay.
And the two things that the body really doesn't like, because weightlifting is a very controlled speed of movement. When you're playing a sport, you're generally trying to control your center of gravity as you're moving through space in an uncontrolled manner. And what the body really doesn't like is slowing down and turning, torque. So if you were only accelerating all the time, if you could circumnavigate the globe, okay, and run as fast as you could in a straight line, you probably never get hurt. Okay? But as soon as you start to slow down, now this is what we call eccentric load. In weightlifting, it's called negative work, where you're lowering a weight against gravity under control. Let me try to explain it this way. Since you brought up weightlifting, if you're in the weight room and you're doing a curl, that's what we call a concentric muscle contraction, meaning your bicep is shortening to bring the weight up, okay, against gravity. Now you have to lower that weight. So as you lower the weight, some people might think you're working your tricep. You're really not. You're still working your bicep, but the bicep is lengthening. We call that an eccentric contraction.
Okay.
There's much more tension in the muscle in the eccentric phase than there is in the concentric phase. Okay. And that's what the body doesn't like. The forces are so great that if that muscle tissue can't handle that tension, it's going to fail. And sometimes it's not necessarily the muscle that fails, but it's what we call the weak link in the kinetic chain. So what's the kinetic chain? Kinetics means movement. So it's a chain of movement. Starts when your heel hits the ground, you go into heel strike. Then the rest of your foot flattens. Okay, we call that the mid stance. That's important because your arch needs to collapse, and that's what we call pronation. But people hear pronation, they think it's bad. We actually want pronation. We just don't want over pronation or under pronation.
Okay.
But the reason why we want it is as that arch collapses, it's a shock absorber for all your body weight. Okay. Otherwise, it would be a very traumatic, okay, to walk and run without any flexibility in the foot. The second thing about pronation, which is really, really important, is that as the arch collapses, we get the first and second and somewhat of the third metatarsal and toes on the ground so you can toe off. So if you looked at my hand as it was a foot, you could see that these bones and the toes, if these were toes, are larger than the ones on the outside of your foot. That's because when you toe off, we want you to toe off on the inside of your foot. That's why the bones are bigger, to handle that load.
Okay.
If you're constantly loading the outside of your foot, you're going to cause a stress reaction, which could turn into a stress fracture, possibly even a comminuted fracture. And so we call that the kinetic chain, but it doesn't end there. Okay? Now, once you toe off, and especially in that mid stance, your lower leg, your shin bone, begins to rotate. And as it rotates, it pulls on your patellar tendon. Your patellar tendon pulls on your quad tendon. Your quad tendon pulls on your
This sounds
quad.
like a song, Gary.
Exactly. Yeah. And that attaches to your hip, and then it goes up your spine. That all the way up to the top of your head. And that's what we call the kinetic chain. And so the load has to go up that chain. And if it hits a link that can't handle the load, that's where it's going to fail, and that's where you're going to get hurt.
So if I get this right, if I'm weight training, it's much more controlled exercise.
That's correct.
Whereas if I'm playing tennis or pickleball or golf, it's the movement which is, or better said, the slowing down or the change of direction, which is not so controlled.
Correct. So sometimes, like I've even heard people say that when Kobe ruptured his Achilles tendon,
Yeah.
he was exploding.
Yeah.
Okay, meaning toeing off.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes and no. Okay, he was getting ready to do that, and to do that, he needed to load, his Achilles tendon, and it failed.
Okay.
Now we can discuss at some point why it failed.
Yeah.
So it was an eccentric load, even though it looked like a concentric load. When you see Michael Jordan flying down the court,
Yeah.
and leaving his feet at the free throw line in the song, I Believe I Can Fly, right? It looks like he's accelerating the entire way. But right before he toed off, he was slowing down.
Okay.
You can't tell with the human eye, but he was eccentrically loading. Okay. So when he exploded off of, when he toed off, that's not when he was vulnerable. It was right before that.
Okay.
And that's why you see hamstring strains.
Okay.
It's when you're trying to slow down, even if it doesn't look like you're slowing down, you are, because you're trying to control your center of gravity to do the next thing, which is either explode or possibly turn left or right. Okay? That's when you become very vulnerable. And sports is not unidirectional. It's not in one direction.
Okay.
It's in different directions, and almost all sports you don't know what direction you're going to be moving in until you do it, because you have an opponent. There's either somebody in front of you or there's a ball that's coming the other way that you have to move to. You can anticipate, where that defensive player is going to be. Or if you're on defense, you can anticipate where the offensive player is going to be. But, can you move through space in an uncontrolled manner? And at the professional level, it just, the loads become greater and greater to the point where there's nothing we can do. This is I think, going to surprise you. There's nothing we can do in practice or scrimmages that can completely mimic a real game.
Okay.
A real game, it takes on a completely different life than the most intense practice or scrimmage you could ever create. You cannot. So to some extent, we prepare as well as we can, concentric loading, eccentrically loading, doing it on the court, off the court, dry land training, doing all this different stuff, okay? And then we put them out there and you cross your fingers and you hope you did everything right. Okay. And even if you did, still stuff goes wrong.
But what about the connection with the mind and balance, especially as you get older?
Sure. There's always a neuromuscular effect. There's a neurological effect in the terms of all of sports psychology, So we can go into a couple of different places, depending on where you want to go with this. So when we're talking about the central nervous system, are we talking about how nerves fire muscles, and in what patterns do they do that?
I'm thinking more about, so again, we're trying to keep people playing the sports they love longer. So over 55, 65. And I remember talking to you about walking backwards as an example, because one of the things that goes when you get older is your balance. So I don't know if that's central nervous or I don't know why it happens.
It's a central nervous system, but it probably isn't your brain. Okay. So the impulse goes from wherever it's coming from to your spinal cord and back. Okay. Let me give you a good example of how interesting the human body is. Have you ever started to roll your ankle, and for some reason it didn't go all the way over, it came back
quite a few times.
Quite a few times, right? There's a reason for it. Yeah, you probably never thought about it, right? You just say, "Wow,
Yeah.
I almost sprained my ankle."
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a reason why you didn't. Okay, we have these microscopic things in our tendons and our joints, our muscles, and they're called annular spiral rings and Golgi tendon organs, and they have like really cool names. And what they do is they sense position, they sense length, okay? And let's say that you're starting to roll your ankle, and these neurological units start sending messages that this joint is going into an abnormal position, and it will fire muscles to pull your ankle back into a neutral position. That's how quickly nerves fire, and they fire muscles. Okay, it's one of the things that they fire. Okay, how quickly that works. So you could say the better you're trained, okay, the better those things operate. Okay, even there's sort of this theory that it may even be a truth. I'm going way back into my neurophysiology days, okay, that maybe people, like I have a daughter that was, one daughter was a dancer and the other daughter was a gymnast. And I mean classical dance, like ballet, okay? Their mom had great sense of balance. She knew where she was in space. You know, these kids could jump off of a diving board and do a flip and just, you know, and if they came off the board the wrong way, they could correct themselves in space. Okay. If I try to do that, I'm going to do a belly flop. Okay.
Me too.
Okay. You spin me around one time, I have no idea where I am in space. And we were talking about kinetic chain before, and this is what we call knowing where you are in kinetic space. Okay, a diver, a high diver, okay, how they do flips and spins. You know, snow skiers, especially the snowboarders, they spin around. You know, gymnasts. They may have more of those microscopic things than we do.
Okay.
Okay. And you might have more, you might be born with more of them, but if you train them, then you get better. They get better. Okay. You can train these things. And so really where you find this in sports, in the training room, is pretty much after somebody got hurt. Okay. And now you're rehabbing them back. Okay. And then one of the things that you're trying to do is some of this high speed work in different planes. And we can, I'd like to actually discuss what I mean by that, the different planes, so that we're giving some insight to your audience about how the body really works. So what we want to do, we talked about, it doesn't like slowing down, doesn't like turning.
Yep.
So when we train, we like to train in what we call working in different planes, okay, and in a weight-bearing place. Okay. So can we talk about the planes now?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I want to do though is, I think an elite athlete level, it's fascinating, but just considering our audience, that they're a little bit older and maybe they've got reduced flexibility and reduced strength with age. Yeah. I mean, is it the same for them?
I think it's more important for them.
Why?
Because I think you lose those things over time.
Okay.
You know, and certainly we can talk about, right now we're talking about neuromuscular stuff, okay? Yeah. But if we just talked about musculoskeletal stuff,
yeah,
okay, and how soft tissue dries out over time,
okay,
you know, I think we need to spend some time on fascia, okay, and explain to the audience what myofascia is, because of a lot of the tightness that occurs as you get older. Absolutely, people get less flexible as they get older.
I know,
okay?
Gary. You don't need to tell me.
I was never very flexible. So losing some flexibility, I didn't have to go very far because I didn't have any to begin with. Okay. But yes, I mean, there's extremely flexible people that become less and less flexible, and they don't understand it. I was always a really flexible person. Now I'm not. What happened? You know, and there are reasons why those things happen. One of those things is what we call myofascia. So myofascia should be looked at as this gigantic piece of connective tissue that covers your entire body.
All right.
Okay, right below your skin, all of your internal organs, all your muscles, all your bones. Our entire human body is encapsulated in fascia, what we call myofascia. Myo would be Latin for muscle.
Okay.
So the best analogy I ever heard about tight fascia is picture yourself putting on a wetsuit that's 3 or 4 sizes too small for you. Okay. Because tight a wetsuit.
That's not a pretty picture,
No,
Gary.
so how tight a wetsuit's supposed to fit if it fits properly?
Yeah.
Well, can you imagine if it's several sizes too tight, it would be doing this to you. Okay. That's what happens to the fascia in your body as you age.
Okay.
And one of those things is the fluid that's in our bodies, okay, dries out. Okay? So the fascia dries out, muscle tissue dries out. Very good opportunity right now to give you the very basics of what we call the sliding I know this stuff's wordy, okay? The sliding filament theory. Okay. All right. It sounds intense, but I'm going to explain it so that it makes a lot of sense to you. Okay. You eat meat?
I do, sir.
Okay. So you're at the steakhouse and you're looking at a steak that's sitting on this plate. So what you're actually looking at is the cross cut of a muscle of an animal. Okay, whatever that animal is. Okay. And so you're looking at our muscle fibers. So the muscle's made up of muscle fibers. Okay. Now we put an electron microscope in there and we realize that those muscle fibers are made up of microscopic muscle fibers called myofibrils.
Okay.
Okay. So where we're at so far is we got a muscle fiber that's made up of a microscopic muscle fiber. Okay. We're going to stop there for a second, and we're going to say that those two structures, one making up the other, are what we call contractile tissue. Means that muscle can contract, like we said, the concentric contraction, and they can lengthen. That's the eccentric contraction.
Okay.
Contractile tissue. Muscle fiber made up of myofibril. But what's the myofibril made up of? Okay. So now we go deeper with the electron microscope, and what the myofibril is made up are strands of protein.
Okay.
Okay. So if you can sort of picture these strands of protein that are kind of like this web, okay, but they're not contractile tissue. Okay. As the muscle fibers contract, they pull the strands of protein towards each other. As it relaxes, the strands of protein separate. So they slide, hence the sliding filament theory. They slide on each other. But as those protein fibers dry out with age, they don't slide. And they get caught on each other. Not the entire muscle, but certain parts of the muscle. And that is, in your language, the knot. That's the knot that you feel. I got a knot in my muscle. We call that an adhesion. If you were in my training room, we wouldn't say knot. The athlete might say knot, but when I'm talking to my colleague, he's got an adhesion here. And you can feel them, you can touch them. It feels kind of sort of like a lump, And what that is are strands of proteins that are caught on each other. So how do you undo them?
Yeah.
Okay. Pressure.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're Kobe Bryant, you're probably going to get me.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to get my hands and you're going to get my elbow, and I'm going to dig in there and I'm going to try to break that muscle tissue apart. Those
Yeah.
muscle fibers, actually, not even muscle fibers, they're strands of protein. Going to try to pull them apart. First, loosen them, what we call release.
Yeah.
Release them.
I can feel the pain just in your elbow.
Let me tell you something. It hurts me doing it.
Okay.
Okay. My hands feel so much better since I retired. I worked on big, strong dudes. Okay.
Yeah.
So these were big adhesions, and they took a lot of pressure. And sometimes it's hard to find people that want to do this kind of work, because it's a couple of things of what we call manual therapy. It's hard on the practitioner as well, and it's time consuming. It's labor intensive. And so you got to find people that are really good and trained to do it and want to do it.
So as you get older, I'm assuming it gets worse.
It gets worse.
Because, again, it's got to be to do with diet and drinking water as well as exercise.
Yes. It certainly has to do with hydration. Absolutely. Okay. But even well-hydrated people, okay, and even young people, okay, not necessarily just for old people. Well, young people get adhesions too.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll talk about repetitive movement, because that's so important in this podcast. We'll get there. Once again, we want to talk about the planes and repetitive movement. We have a lot to talk about.
We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that I can get this in a logical order. Okay. So here we are. We have the adhesions, and we're going to do the myofascial release. Okay, and we're going to, if you're Kobe Bryant, you're going to have me. You're going to have manual therapy. But if I have 15 guys on the roster and there's only one of me, and the game is in an hour and a half, okay, I can't do this on everybody. So the further down you are on the food chain, okay, you might have to do this yourself. So how do you do self myofascial release, which is probably most of the people that are listening to this?
Yes.
Okay, so we have vibrating guns. Okay, massage guns. Okay. So you find that spot and you hit it. We have foam rollers. Okay. And let's talk about that for a second, because when I see people doing foam rolling, they're all doing it wrong. Okay. So they roll. That's not how you foam roll. The way you foam roll is you roll until you feel that tender spot. Okay. Once you roll over that spot, you'll know it. You'll feel it. Yes. And then you stop rolling. Okay. And then you sink into the roller and let grab, and over 20 or 30 seconds of repeatedly doing this, the idea is that it'll release those strands of proteins that have been caught on each other.
So you're literally using pressure, be that a gun or be that
gravity,
your hands, or be that a foam roller, to push out and release the protein.
Well, there's one more step we haven't gotten there yet. We're just talking about.
I thought I had it.
We're talking about. We're talking about what you can use to pressure on these things. So we talked about manual therapy, that kind of pressure. We talked about foam rolling. Yep. We talked about massage gun. Yep. The other thing is lacrosse ball. There's also vibrating balls. Okay. Sometimes it's better to use a ball, than it is a foam roller. Okay. Because of the shape. Okay. So, for instance, I hope that we get into a lot of what I'm all about, and postural, dysfunctional movement patterns have to do with the hip flexors. So when you're trying to release hip flexors, it's better to do it with a ball. Okay. Because of the contour of the body. Okay. So where are we now? We got tight fascia. Yep. Okay. We have soft tissue that's drying out. Yep. We have adhesions. So far, that's the logical progression. Yep. Okay. Now we've tried to release that adhesion. If all you did was that, you'd feel better, but you might not get better. Okay. You're just feeling a little bit better because you release some of those adhesions. Yeah. But how about if after we released the adhesion, we did not just stretching, even if you just did stretching, you'd even be better than just doing the release, but we did resistance stretching.
Okay.
So resistance stretching, it's best if you had a partner, okay, that's resisting you, but you can use a strap.
Okay.
Okay, stretching strap, right?
So like resistance bands or resistance
no, not
cords?
necessarily. We're not looking at resistance in the band. We're looking at you providing the resistance with an eccentric load.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say
Back
that
to weight training
okay,
again.
well,
Yeah.
let's say that we're doing a lower extremity.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to stretch my hamstring,
Yeah.
and I use a strap. And I can pull my leg back towards my head, and that's going to stretch my hamstring, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But how about now if I'm pulling the strap toward my leg towards my head, but at the same time, I'm pushing in the opposite direction of the strap?
Okay.
That's an eccentric load, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm stretching, but I'm
just using body weight. Okay.
So what the idea of this is that those strands of protein that are stuck on each other, if you're doing resistance stretching, now you're literally ripping the adhesion apart.
Okay.
You're not just putting pressure on it to release it. You're then so first pressure,
Yeah.
second resistance stretching.
Okay.
Okay. Now we got another term for you.
Okay.
You
I'm
ready?
ready. I'm ready.
Take a deep breath.
Okay.
Got your game face on?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
I wish I had a pen.
Okay. I'll text it to you.
Okay, thank you.
We don't use pens anymore. Everything's electronic. Okay, here we go. Reciprocal innervation.
Okay, say that one more time.
Reciprocal innervation.
Okay.
Okay, so where we're going to go with this, we talked about hip flexor tightness.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got the hip flexor tightness. We're going to use a lacrosse ball.
Yeah.
We're going to release that hip flexor. Okay. Now we're going to stretch that hip flexor.
Yeah.
Then we're going to stretch the hamstring.
Yeah.
Okay. But the opposite movement of the hip flexor is the glute.
Okay.
Okay. So what the hip flexor can do is bring your leg this way.
Yeah.
Flexion towards your body. What the glute does is the opposite, extension.
Okay.
Okay. You're with me so far?
I am.
Reciprocal innervation in this context means that if I have a really, really tight hip flexor, it's going to shut off the neuro drive to my glute.
Okay.
It's literally going to shut it off. It's not going to fire the way it should. Okay. You with me so far?
I am.
Okay. So hip flexor primary movement is flexion.
Yeah.
Glute primary movement extension.
Yep.
Hamstring. We said we were going to stretch that, right?
Yeah.
Primary movement knee flexion, bringing your heel towards your butt.
Okay.
Secondary mover is hip extension,
Okay.
like the glute. Okay, so if the glute's not firing all the way, that means the hamstring has to work harder, but it's not a primary mover of extension. It's a secondary mover.
Okay.
Okay. So you got a tight hip flexor, you got a glute that's shut off. Now you got a hamstring that's working overtime.
So when you're playing tennis or pickleball and having this movement,
You're in trouble.
yeah.
What's going to happen is you're going to strain your hamstring.
Okay.
Okay. So going back, okay, if all we did was release the hip flexor, you'd get better. Okay. You wouldn't get well, but you'd feel better for a short period of time.
And it's better to do that with a ball.
Lacrosse ball.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I release the hip flexor and then do resistance stretching on the hip flexor and my hamstring,
Yeah.
you're going to be even better.
Okay.
You're not going to get completely well, but you're going in the right direction because you haven't activated your glute yet.
Yeah.
See, so everybody's going to probably do one of these things, but if you did all three, if you released the hip flexor, stretched your hamstring, and then activated your glute, now what we've done is we've gotten your pelvis in neutral, your hip flexors firing the way it should, your glutes firing the way it should, the hamstrings firing the way it should, it's firing in the patterns that it should. Now you can move through space in an uncontrolled manner, controlling your center of gravity.
When should we be doing this?
Before you do anything. And now here's the kicker.
Okay, now, Gary, I've got to disappoint you now.
Okay, wait.
When was the last time you went to a tennis warm-up? Over 55 tennis warm-up. Doesn't matter if you're a man. It doesn't matter if you're a woman.
Yeah.
It's usually short tennis ball,
Right.
hit. Then you'll go to the back of the court, do this for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then you'll play a match.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're doing the podcast.
Okay.
Because you got those people doing that, right? And then they get hurt, and then they become an annuity for people like me. Okay. So the best way to treat an injury is to prevent it. Okay. And where I'm going with this whole concept is that, once again, I know I sound like a broken record, but like you were saying to me the other day, you just tell them until they get it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you only did the hip flexor release, you'd be better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
If you did that and the stretching, you'd be doing better than nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you did all three, you're not only going to be better at that moment, but you're actually going to get well over time.
Okay.
Because you're correcting, things postures that you've created, what we call dysfunctional postures. And it's not just, it's especially true with the older athletes, but to make everybody feel better, professional athletes have these problems.
Okay.
And it's because they've done the same thing over and over and over again.
Repetition.
So they've created these postural distortion movement patterns. So they end up in the same place for different reasons. Okay? And partially maybe even with the old people, because they've played tennis for so long and have done the same thing over and over again, they've created these dysfunctional movement patterns, along with the body not like slowing down and turning. The other thing it really doesn't like is doing the same thing over and over and over again. Okay. And especially for macro motion, like sports, meaning big motions, but even micro motion. And the best example that I can give is somebody who sits in front of their computer all day. Take a look at him. Shoulders become rounded, head moves forward, got neck pain, got shoulder pain. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now what happens? They go to the massage therapist and they say, I got pain. It's right here. Where does it hurt? It's here. Okay. And they start working in that spot. And the person's going to leave there and it's going to feel better. They're in the wrong spot. The pain is here. The cause is here. Okay. So because you're doing this all the time, these muscles are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Okay. Just like we were talking about the hip flexor. Yeah. If you want to feel better here, you got to release this. Okay. Now you release this. Now you stretch it. Yeah. Now you stretch these. Now you activate these. Now your head is not only able to move back, it can stay back. Okay. But there's always a but, right? You didn't create these dysfunctional postures overnight. Okay. You did this for a long time. So it takes us a long time to get you out of it. Okay. And I think earlier you and I were talking about core strength. Yep. Okay. And I said, really, we should call it core endurance. Yes. Okay. Because when we're talking about, first of all, let's the core thing. I still hear people talking about abs. Yeah. They're talking about core. They're talking about that. That's not me. Yeah. I'm talking about the core of an apple, the deep pelvic floor muscles. Okay. That's really your core. Okay. And all the women will understand what a Kegel exercise is. Maybe some of the men. Do you know what it is?
I have no idea.
No idea. Okay. So Kegel exercise, Dr. Kegel, sometime way back, he realized that postpartum with women, had their babies, and they became incontinent. Okay? And they had these weak pelvic floor muscles. Okay? And he started creating these exercises to activate those. It's the same thing for men in sports and in movement, is activating these deep core muscles, not just your abs, okay, to try to keep your spine erect, your pelvis not rotated forward, but in a neutral position, okay, so that you don't have back pain, you don't pull the hamstring, you don't shut off the glute and create all these dysfunctional problems. So in a nutshell, we're going to get a little wordy here. Might say it over and over again until you get it, okay? The body does not like repetitive motion. Okay. When you do the same thing over and over again, you create a compensation.
Okay.
And the compensation creates a dysfunction. So you're in front of your computer all the time. The compensation is this. The dysfunction is the pain that you're getting in your, okay, yep, or the tightness, shut off the glute, shut off these muscles. Those are dysfunctional movement patterns. So you go through the whole corrective exercise routine, the myofascial release, the resistance stretching, the activation. Now we get you in neutral, and you'll last there for however long you can, because when you fatigue, you will go back into your default pattern.
Okay.
Okay. That's when you stop.
Okay.
It's like, tell people it's like banging your head against the wall. It feels better when you stop.
Yeah.
Okay. So no longer do we want the attitude of breaking through the wall.
Okay.
We don't want that. What we want to do is we want to bring you up to the wall with good movement efficiency, okay, pelvis in neutral, good core strength. You're moving through space in an uncontrolled manner, controlling your center of gravity. Yeah. Eccentric load, everything, the whole kinetic chain is working. Okay. Now you get tired. That's when we want to stop.
Okay.
And go into recovery mode.
Okay.
Okay. So that the next time, okay, we build a little bit more endurance, okay, in your core strength, and we move the wall. You know, instead of because if you try to break through it, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And you might break through it 1,000 times. Okay. We don't know when it's going to come, but we know when you're vulnerable. Now, you're sitting on the Laker bench like me, you see this person's movement efficiency isn't good. It's the end of the game. You got to win the game.
Yeah.
You can't yank them out. Okay. So it even happens at the highest levels, but you're there and you got your fingers crossed, you know, because you know that guy's tired. Okay. You see him at the free throw line, he's grabbing his shorts and he's, you know, he's bent over. Okay. But he's getting paid $50 million. Okay. Now you're a geriatric and you love playing tennis, and there's all these other aspects that go beyond just hitting a tennis ball. Yeah. Okay. There's this competitiveness that's inside of you. And you mentioned chess. It doesn't do it. You know, pinochle. It doesn't do it. Gin rummy, it doesn't do it. Okay. What does it is tennis. That's what, you know, that itch. That's what scratches that itch for me. I got to do it. I got to do it. And you push yourself probably beyond a limit. Was it worth it? You have to answer that question yourself. Okay. I know for me, and I know better. I'm 72. So I was told recently, okay, that this, because it's great, because someone was asking me how old I was and you know, this kind of thing. And they said, well, you look great, but you got, you know, and I said, yeah, you know. And they said, well, I look at those as wise whiskers. Okay. Maybe, but not always. Okay. I'm going to give you a great example. It's coming up in 2 weeks. The Redondo Beach Super Bowl 5 and 10K. So I used to run the 10K, but I'm 72 now and I run the 5K. And we do it as a family, and sometimes friends come, and then, after we all meet, okay, because we don't sort of hang on each other. Everybody just goes their own speed, and we meet at the end. And then they all come over to the house, and we have this giant breakfast, and then later in the day is the Super Bowl. We make it a whole family event. Okay?
Beautiful.
Now, every year, I say, you know what? I'm not going to get caught up in this. I'm just going to walk it, and, maybe if I feel pretty good, I'll jog a couple blocks here and there, maybe on flat surfaces, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The gun goes off and I take off, like I'm a Kenyan marathoner, and I push and I push. And while I'm doing it, I'm saying to myself, you shouldn't be doing this, and I know the course now, so I kind of know a little bit better about where to push and where not to, but I'm still doing more than I should. And I usually finish and I'm happy at that moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next day.
And then I go home and swallow 4 Advil and say to myself, I should have took this before the race. Okay. But I forgot, try to get ahead of it.
Yeah. Although
there's some research that just came out about taking Advil before a strenuous activity causes heart attacks.
Oh, okay.
So far I've dodged that, and not knowing that I was doing something smart while I was doing something stupid.
Yeah.
And then like for 2 weeks, I'm sore, I can't, because my workouts are, I live 6 blocks from the Strand, Manhattan Beach. So I walk to the Strand. That's my warm up. And then I run a block, walk a block, run a block, walk a block, get my heart rate up, get it slowed down, up, down, up, down. And that's where the data is telling us to do. And sometimes I run 2 or 3 blocks and then walk a block. It all depends on how I feel. But that Super Bowl Sunday, how I feel has got nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's the gun.
I'm getting timed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're gonna post it. Somebody's going to go on the internet. I'm going to go on the internet. I'm going to find where I finished. Okay. And we'll look at who finished ahead of me and who finished behind me and how fast were they ahead of me? Like, what do I have to do next year? Is it like 10 seconds?
Yeah.
Or is that guy 2 minutes ahead of me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you cannot help it. And so what we're here for is we know your mentality.
Yep.
Okay. And probably no matter what we tell you here, you're still going to get hurt, but maybe we can mitigate it a little bit, and help you out. Maybe you'll get hurt less often.
Yep.
And maybe there'll be times when you are out there and whoever you're playing with or against, it's really not that important to keep going. You should stop, so you do. It might not be your arch rival. You know what I mean?
Your nemesis.
Your nemesis. Yeah, because we all have them, right? Yeah, I want to beat that guy. Yeah. And so I think and then there's a level of, and I think this is really important. There's a level of camaraderie. Okay, it's different when you're playing sports with a group of people.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say you're a swimmer. That's pretty much you in the water.
Yeah.
There's other events and stuff, and you're on a swim team, but when the gun goes off, it's you in the water, okay, in your lane.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not working with anybody else, and you do the best you can. But then when you get out of the water, you're with your team. So there's a camaraderie there. There's a friendship, in theory. I've always said, I'm trying not to go off on this tangent, but I've always said that a team is like a family.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get mad at your mom and dad or your brother and sister, but you never stop loving them.
Yeah.
And that's the way a team is supposed to be. I might even get emotional here a little bit because I've had teams. I've been with teams that were magnificent, talented teams. Okay. But for whatever reason, things happened and there was a love loss. And as a result, it cost us championships, literally. And when you have a team that can win it, if you're that good, you gotta win it because you might not ever get another chance to win it. Now, I know we're going off in a different direction, but not really, because you're the one that brought up the whole mental thing. And if you look at the blue zones, which are the highest concentrations of centenarians in the world, and we can talk about that, one of those common denominators was that they all had very rich family and social lives. They surrounded themselves with people, friends and family that they liked.
Yeah. And again, I think, as you said, we'll talk about this later, but just sort of bringing it back to the sort of introduction of lifetime sports. I mean, if you go to any tennis court or any pickleball court, you can tell the ladies playing because they're just talking to each other and having fun. You can tell the guys that are playing because it is competition. They're like dogs chasing after a ball and they push themselves too far. And I think the whole objective is for us talking together over the coming weeks and months is really to talk about each individual sport. So we're specifically talk about tennis and how best to warm up and recover from playing tennis. But Gary, I just want to thank you. So really good conversation about warming up and how important it is. Really great conversation about why you get tight muscles and how you can sort of get rid of that. I just want to sort of finish up a little bit on recovery. We've talked about pushing ourselves. We talked about the need to warm up, and we'll talk about that much more in the podcast. But let's kind of land it on the recovery phase, and in particular, I want to talk about something you mentioned to me is that. I thought it was 50%, but you said it's higher than that. But if you don't do a warm-up, if you do get yourself injured, what are the chances that you're going to have that same injury again and again, especially as you get older?
Pretty good. More than pretty good. Statistically, it's up there like 90%.
Okay.
So if you've been injured once, you have about a 90% chance of re-injuring the same structure. Okay, so it's not even another injury; it's the same injury. Okay, and that usually comes from a couple reasons. One, probably didn't rehab correctly. Came back too soon. The other possibility is a couple possibilities here that come to mind. Is that, especially with soft tissue, for instance, if we looked at soft tissue once again under a microscope, like I was talking about, ligamentous fibers, muscle fibers, tendon fibers, just so people understand, ligaments attach bone to bone. So that's what a joint. When two bones come together, that's a joint. What holds those two bones together is a ligament. Okay. A tendon attaches a muscle to a bone.
Okay.
Muscle to bone is tendon. Okay. If you want to get real wordy about this, even the doctors get this wrong. A strain occurs to muscle and tendon. A sprain occurs to a ligament.
Okay.
So you don't sprain a muscle and you don't strain a joint.
Okay.
You strain a muscle and you sprain a joint. Okay. Now, sometimes those terms get confused and everybody knows what you're talking about, but it's wrong. By the letter.
Oh, that's why you're here, Gary.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to these tissues that you're born with, muscle, tendon, and ligamentous tissue, looking at it under a microscope, all these strands, these fibers are in line with each other in parallel fashion. And especially with muscle and tendon tissue, because the ligaments, we don't want them to stretch. That's how they snap, okay?
Yeah.
But muscle tissue, we want it to be able to contract and relax. We want it to shorten and lengthen.
Yep.
Concentric contraction, eccentric contraction. Okay? And having those fibers in line with each other in a parallel fashion allows them to have that ability, okay, that capability of doing that. Now you've torn that tissue. Okay? It wouldn't be uncommon to see someone who's torn a hamstring or a calf muscle. Calf muscle, you talk about tennis all the time.
Yep.
Calf muscles are very, very prone, okay, to being injured in tennis, especially the medial gastroc, which we'll talk about later. Okay. Once that tissue is torn, sometimes you'll see like black and blue under the skin. It's bleeding. You've torn tissue. Okay. So now what happens is your lymphatic system, your body has to clean all that up. And then once it does, it can lay down new cells, what we call fibroblasts. And it's collagen. Okay. But the problem with collagen, fibroblasts, really the colloquial term is scar tissue. Okay. It lays itself down at random. So all these cells that are in parallel and in line with each other are like this, but now the scar tissue, now you've torn this tissue.
Yeah.
Now the scar tissue lays itself down at random and you lose that extensibility.
Yeah.
So where that junction is, where the scar tissue is and the good strands, that's what's going to tear again.
Okay.
Because
Makes sense.
The scar tissue doesn't have the extensibility. So you're going to lay down more scar tissue.
Okay.
And you're going to lay down more scar tissue.
It just keeps
Okay,
happening.
Yeah.
So how do you prevent that then?
Well, you prevent it by never getting hurt in the first place by doing all the things that
Warm
we
up
told you to do.
Hydration. Okay.
But then if you do become injured, first primarily is to control the inflammatory process. And now we can go down this rabbit hole, okay? Because there is a very big movement out there that you do not want to control the inflammatory process because the body's response to injury and sickness and stuff is inflammation. And then when the inflammatory process happens, that triggers the other side of the body to heal it.
Okay.
And it's all true, except the degree of the inflammatory process.
Okay.
So let's say the easiest thing is an ankle. Let's say you sprain your ankle and you take your shoe and your sock off and you see this big swollen ankle.
Yes.
Okay. Your body's not going to lay. Now, we have to get scar tissue in there. We have to do that. We have to heal that ligament that you've torn, or ligaments that you've torn. But it's not going to lay down the new cells until it's cleaned up the damaged cells. Okay? That we have to get that out of there. The lymphatic system needs to get it out. So that's what we mean, somebody like me, of controlling the inflammatory process. So initially, you're going to get a compression wrap. We're going to compress it.
Yep.
You're going in the ice bucket.
Yep.
Okay. That's going to do several things. It's going to slow the nerve impulses down, so you're not going to feel as much pain. Maybe the most important thing that happens there is that part of this inflammatory process that we're talking about, when you've torn tissue, your body will automatically slow blood flow down to that area because it doesn't want it to bleed out. Okay. The problem with that, the way God made us, is that there are cells around the damaged cells that were not damaged. They're healthy cells. But now that they're not getting a blood flow to it because your body automatically slowed the blood flow down, they're dying of what we call hypoxia. They're not getting enough oxygen to keep them alive. So you're getting more cell death at the cellular level. This is microscopic stuff here we're talking about. At the cellular level, than just what the tissue that you tore. But when you put them in the ice bucket, it slows the metabolism down of those cells so they don't need as much oxygen.
Okay.
So you're doing several things here, okay? You're causing a vasoconstriction. Your body's already doing that, but vasoconstriction means the blood cells are getting tighter, okay, to reduce blood flow to the area, to reduce the swelling, okay? You're slowing the metabolism down in the cells that weren't damaged. Now you've come out of that ice bucket, cut that compression wrap off, okay? You've already swelled up to a point, but we put the compression wrap on so you don't swell even more than what you already have, okay? I mean, I've had guys go from the court to the training room. That's 2 minutes. And by the time we got their shoe off, they had a big, gigantic swollen ankle. Now you get my hands. Okay. And I literally pushed that swelling up towards your heart, towards the lymphatic system. Okay. And it sometimes it looks like there's an alien under your skin because you can actually see it move. Okay. And I'm trying to flush it out. Trying to flush it out. It's very it hurts because that spot where you tore the tissue, I have to go over that spot
again and again.
And you've torn tissue. It hurts. It's pain, right? You know, it helps that you went in the ice because that numbs it up a little bit. But you know, you got to suck it up and do this. And then when I feel like I can't get any more out of there, then I wrap you up with the compression wrap again from your toes towards your heart. Okay? Try to keep you elevated. Okay? So you don't swell anymore. But pretty much no matter what I do, you know, your body's going to want to swell because you tore the tissue. So if I can give you maybe the greatest example of this is in the 2000 finals, 2000, against the Indiana Pacers, Kobe Bryant sprains his ankle in game 2. So I think it was game 2. I think it was game 2. So it was 2-3-2. 2 games at home, 3 games at their place, 2 games back at our place. It's got this big, giant, swollen ankle. I do everything I just told you, plus some other stuff, okay? You know, you want to keep the muscles and the tendons firing, so you have them going through the range of motion with some resistance. I mean, I don't expect, you know, the people that are listening to this to do all that or know all that, but just so you know, we were doing that stuff too, because as soon as you get that injury, the neuromuscular unit's going to shut off. It's going to stop firing those muscles, and then we have to re-educate them. So you try to keep all that going. Okay? Fast forward, we do all that. Here's the beauty of what happened. We go to the airplane. So he didn't go home and I went home. We both went to the airplane and we flew to Indianapolis to play game 3. Which means we were together, which means he was in this compression wrap and it's trying to swell. And I always liken it to like the cartoon where the hits a thumb with the hammer, and because that's what it feels like. It's throbbing, right? And when you can't take it anymore, you tell me. And then we cut the compression wrap off. We stick you back into a bucket of ice. You come out of the ice. I flush it out again. We wrap you up. Now we show up at the hotel. I change my room right next to yours. Okay? You knock on my door at 3 o'clock in the morning. You can't sleep anymore. It's throbbing. I get out of bed. I cut the wrap off, put you in the compression wrap. Okay, put you back in the slush bucket. We do it again and again and again and again and again. Okay? And people always ask me, I sprained my ankle. It took me 6 weeks. You know, you had a guy back in a week. Yeah. You know, I had 24 hours a day with the guy, you know. As a result, he missed game 3. Between games 3 and 4, we had a few days. We're at practice. He's on the sideline. I'm now moving these bones around in his feet, okay, because they're kind of stuck together, right? And all of a sudden, it's called a cuboid bone, mobilization of the cuboid bone. All of a sudden, I feel this pop, and he felt it too. And I look at him and I say, this is either going to be really good or really bad. And he jumps off the plinth, which is a treatment table. He goes, you did it. I can play. And he played. And we beat the Pacers in 6 games. And he didn't just play. I mean, we couldn't have won without him.
Yeah.
Right? So the body is a very, very interesting thing, this whole kinetic chain that I'm talking about. And, going into a weight room and seeing people do leg extensions, okay? There may be a place for that in certain rehab, context of certain rehab, but what we want to see is what we call closed kinetic chain exercises, weight-bearing exercises. You are weight-bearing. Both of your feet are on the ground, okay? And you're moving in more than one joint and more than one plane. And I want to talk about the plane so people can understand, because it's like I was telling you earlier about Kobe. He didn't just come in and say, I need your help, get me right. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Because the more you understand, because I need your help to do to you what I need to do. You're a participant in this, okay? And especially if you have to do it to yourself.
Yep.
Okay? Because you might think you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Okay. The other day I told you about limb patterns.
Yeah.
If you remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back to this sort of interchange of knowing why you're doing something, you're not just foam rolling.
Yep.
Now I've explained it to you so that you'll do it better.
Find the point so that you can then sink into
Otherwise, whoever's listening to this might just go back out and did the same thing they did yesterday, and they're doing it wrong. They think they're doing it right, but they're not. Okay. So going back to this, you're hurt, you're injured, you have pain, you start limping. Okay? At some point, you're not hurt anymore, but you're still limping. You don't think you are. You feel like you're moving okay, but I'm looking at you, you're not moving well. Okay. And I say to you, stop limping. And I'm talking about like a minor limp, like a little hitch. I'm not talking about, you're dragging your leg. You're like, I'm not limping. You are. You have a hitch. I don't feel it. I know you don't. I'm going to get you a mirror. Okay. And so with the Lakers, we had the Laker girls used to practice, and they had these, the dancers always dance in front of mirrors for that reason. They want to see their form, right? I pull these giant mirrors out, get them on the other side of the court, and I make them run towards the mirror. I could tell him he's limping all day, every day. The moment he saw himself run, he corrected it. His neuromuscular system could correct it. But he couldn't correct it. His brain couldn't correct it without him seeing it. Okay? So there's this sort of intermingling of different parts of how the human body works. Some of it is just, at the joint level. Some of it goes to just the spinal cord. Some of it goes all the way to the brain. And it's complex. But it doesn't mean you can't learn it. If I learned it, anybody can learn, okay? But it's taking the time and doing it right. Okay. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, is explain things in a way so that they make sense to you. And you're not just going out and doing, the 2-minute warm-up. And probably the 2 minutes of warm-up that you're doing might not be a bad idea to do those, but we're not. That's after we've done all this other stuff. And
again, here I think is a good point, Gary. We're trying to keep active adults active for longer.
Right.
We live longer now, and we'll talk about this. And you mentioned blue zones, and we'll talk about this in a later episode. But so we've got to warm up properly, and we talked about that. You said that 90% of the time, you're going to have a reoccurring injury. And that injury, I've seen it on the tennis courts myself. People keep pushing themselves. And what you're saying is the quicker you stop, the quicker you can start to get into rehabilitation. And you've got to do things differently. Something you talked about, just changing gears a little bit, was that with tennis and golf and pickleball, we're warming up incorrectly because of the planes of the body. Could you sort of develop that a little bit? Because
Sure.
this I found absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I like talking about it too.
Yeah.
Okay. And the interesting, I find that when I tell people that, okay, so neighbors, friends, people I don't even know, somehow they find me and I try to help them. I don't want anything. I just want people to, be active and do well. And I have this tendency, all I ever wanted to be was a college professor. And I was a year away from finishing my PhD, and Pat Riley talked me into coming to the Lakers. And I'm glad he did. It's a great choice that I made in life, but it wasn't my goal. Okay. My goal was to be a university professor in sports medicine. Okay. So because I feel like I have that thing, I like to use it when I can, because I don't have my own classroom. This is it. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about the planes and how the body works. Okay. Samurai sword. I didn't use that one with you, but no. I'm going to give you the samurai sword version. Samurai sword version. Samurai comes. He doesn't like me, and so he's going to. You've seen the samurai things, like with just one swipe of the sword, they cut you in half.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's going to cut me in half, but he's going to cut me in half this way. Okay. He's going to separate my body in two pieces this way.
Okay.
Okay. So, what we want to know is that the axis of movement is perpendicular to the plane.
Okay.
Okay. So if I get cut in half this way and the axis of movement is perpendicular to the plane, that means the axis is this.
Yep.
Which means the movement is this.
Okay.
Okay. Bending at the waist.
Okay.
Okay. That's what we call the sagittal plane. Don't worry about sagittal. Okay. But you understand.
Yep.
Okay. Here comes a samurai sword, but instead of coming this way, he's coming this way at me.
Okay.
And he decides to cut me in half this way.
Okay.
Front and back. He splits me this way. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So now here's the plane.
Yep.
Axis is perpendicular to the plane.
Yep.
So this is the movement. Okay. Frontal plane. Here comes the samurai sword again. Okay. And he's going to cut me in half this way. Okay. Cut me in half this way.
Yeah.
Axis is perpendicular to the plane.
Yeah.
Movement is this way.
Tennis and pickleball.
Okay. So most of the training, okay, we talked about doing an arm curl.
Yeah.
We talked about weightlifting.
Yeah.
Most of training is done in the sagittal plane.
Yeah.
Sagittal plane. Okay.
So this way.
This way.
Yeah.
Okay. This is sagittal plane.
Okay.
This is sagittal plane.
Yeah.
Okay. Most athletic movement is done in the transverse plane.
Yeah.
Axis is this way.
Yeah.
So think about it. You're training in the wrong plane. Okay. Now, actually, athletic movement is multiplanar.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we want is we want movement in more than one joint and more than one plane.
Yep.
Okay. And really what we want is diagonal movement. Okay. So it's pretty funny. I think it's funny. I've seen people that are training for basketball.
Yeah.
Okay. And they get a ball at the baseline, and it's, of course, 90 feet, right? Okay. and they run 90 feet in a straight line. When have you ever seen that in a basketball game?
Never.
Never.
There's some
There's
people in the way.
So it's this, right?
Yeah.
It's diagonal movement, but our bodies move diagonally as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything that we do is diagonal. And as a result, our muscles fire in patterns. Okay. So they fire diagonally. So you want to train diagonally. Okay. Probably the best example that I ever heard of this was the eating pattern. You pick up a fork and you do this. You don't do that.
True.
Which would be the different planes.
Yes.
Okay. You do all the planes diagonally. Well, we need to train and rehab that way.
Okay.
So when you go to the gym and you're in a machine where you're not weight bearing, okay, you can get stronger. You know, there's times we see athletes come in, you take a look at their body, they're like, this guy looks amazing. Now you start watching him move. Okay. There's a big difference between bodybuilding, okay, and sports, because bodybuilding is very stagnant. Okay. You build all this muscle tissue and then you do a static pose.
Yeah.
You know?
Classic Arnie.
Yeah. Yeah. You know?
So what are some great warm-up exercises then for tennis, pickleball, golf?
Okay. I mean, they're generally specific to, to the sport. But let's go back a step. Before we get to that point, we've done the lacrosse ball, stretch the hip flex, stretch the hamstring, activate the glute.
Yep.
In your world, say it enough times and they'll get it. Okay. So that's what we've done first.
Yep.
Okay. We've done the myofascial release, the stretching, the activation.
Yep.
Okay. Now we're ready for warm up. Well, let's take tennis. That's your sport.
Yep.
Okay. So, let's say you get your tennis racket because you're going to play tennis.
Yeah.
So let's warm up with a racket.
Okay.
Okay. But we don't need a ball.
Yeah.
Okay. My advice to you would be to lift one leg, weight bear on one leg.
Yeah.
Okay. Flex and do your forehand on one leg.
On one leg.
On one leg.
Okay.
Then do your backhand on one leg.
What's that doing,
Okay.
Gary?
Well, it's you're activating everything going in that leg, so you're not getting any compensation from the other side.
Okay.
Then you're going to do the other leg.
Okay.
Okay. Then we're going to go to both legs.
Okay.
Okay. Do the same motions again. Okay. Forehand, backhand. That's the game. Okay. Forehand, backhand. Then we're going to do it weight bearing again, but this time you're going to take an old tennis ball. A soft one, not a hard one.
Got plenty of them.
You're going to put it under your foot.
Okay.
So one foot's going to be on a stable surface, the other foot's going to be on an unstable surface, and now you're going to go through your motion.
So, oh, wow.
And then you're going to do it on the other leg.
Okay.
And you're going to do forehand and backhand.
Okay, Gary, I know a lot of people I play tennis with them. They're going to be saying to me, why would I do that?
Okay.
What's it doing for me?
It's a neuromuscular thing. Okay. So we're firing muscles, okay, so that when you get out there and you start moving through space in an uncontrolled manner, you can control your center of gravity. So we start on one stable surface, progress to two stable surfaces, maybe even the other way around. Start on two stable surfaces and then progress to one stable surface,
Okay.
the other side,
And then put a
the
ball.
ball.
Okay.
And and then you want to do your stretching on top of it. You know what I mean? Okay. Of your arm. You know what I mean? Because when we talk about tennis, so many things can go wrong out there. Because you're moving, ballistically in different planes, and it takes speed, it takes endurance, it takes power. So it's hard to encompass all of these things because you're correcting. It's hard to correct everything.
Yeah.
You know, because you're not going in a straight line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I walk and I run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one foot in front of the other.
Straight line.
Yeah. You can still get hurt, but you know what I mean? Tennis elbow, there's a reason why, you know, they call it tennis elbow. And so all the muscles that control the hand start at the elbow.
Okay.
The wrist and the hand all start at the elbow. Interesting concept. When I started in sports medicine back in '79, your team physician was an orthopedic surgeon, and he did everything. You know, if it was a foot or ankle, it was that guy.
Yeah.
If it was a knee, it was the same guy. If it was the hip, it was the same guy. If it was a hand, wrist, or shoulder, same guy. The only guy that would change is if it was your spine.
Okay.
So you had an orthopod that did the whole body, and then you had another guy that was an orthopod, but he just did spine. So you had two guys. Not like that anymore, okay? It's foot and ankle is one specialty. Knee and shoulder, yes, they're apart from each other, but they put them together. So a guy that's a knee specialist generally is a shoulder guy.
Yeah.
Shoulder guy is also a knee guy, okay? Spine guy is still spine. Hand, wrist, elbow is one specialty, okay? So a guy that does knees and shoulders, I'm not saying he can't do it, okay? It may be in a smaller town or something, but in a place like LA,
Yeah.
okay, if you have hand, wrist, or elbow, you're going to a hand, wrist, or elbow. If you're smart, you're going to go to a guy because he's the guy that goes to the hand, wrist, elbow meetings.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The shoulder and the knee guy, they go to those meetings. Okay. The hip guy goes to the hip meetings, and the foot and ankle guy goes to those meetings. Okay? You can't be great at anything, at everything anymore. You can be good at everything, but you can't be great.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's a reason why we call this particular injury tennis elbow, because of the gripping that happens when you're playing tennis and pickleball.
Yeah.
Okay. Those muscles that grip they originate at the elbow.
Okay.
Okay. And where they originate is on what we call the epicondyle.
Okay.
Okay. That's just a part of the bone where the muscles attach. Okay. So the way we look at the skeleton, the musculoskeletal unit is origin insertion. Origin, where does the muscle start? Where it ends is called the insertion.
Okay.
Okay. So they start here and then they insert down here.
Yeah.
Okay. Where they start, that load of hitting a tennis ball, that load goes here in the kinetic chain.
Okay.
And that's when this becomes inflamed. So when we hear itis on the end of a word, itis means inflammation of. Tonsillitis, inflammation of tonsils.
Okay.
Appendicitis, inflammation. Epicondylitis, inflammation of the epicondyles. But we can't tell everybody you have epicondylitis or say you have tennis elbow.
Yeah.
All right? Swimmers get it.
Okay.
Because of the movement. Carpenters.
Okay.
Now,
Painters.
yes.
Yes.
And if you are a cabinet maker,
Yeah.
okay, you might get it, might not. If you're a framer,
Yeah.
okay, and all you're doing is swinging a hammer all day long,
Yeah.
okay, think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your livelihood. You know, you need to work.
So, Gary, we've talked about warm up, and yes, tennis ball players, pickleball players, we've got to learn that like 2-3 minutes of short ball tennis is not a warm up. So we've learned about that. We've learned about there's a 90% chance of the same injury doing it again if you don't treat it properly. That was great. But let's spin and talk about recovery. I've just finished a game. I've won, of course. recovery for a tennis player is put the bag on and sort of go home. Golfers, it's 19th hole, let's have a drink. What should we be doing after we've played?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're going to go back to that conversation we had about the inflammatory process and where some people are coming from. So there are some people out there that are saying don't put ice on your joints after you play because we want that inflammatory process to happen from playing so that your body will react and heal itself. I don't really aspire to that. My experience is that post competition, post practice, okay, post workout, especially if you have certain ailments, knees, shoulder, elbow, very specific things, okay, that 20 minutes of ice is good. I'll even go as far as going backwards on this conversation that before you go out there, most of the thoughts are warming up.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that we have found clinically, and I use that term loosely because it doesn't mean it's science.
Yeah.
It just means a lot of people like me had good results and we talked about it, and clinically it's proven according to us. Okay. Okay. Contrast treatment. Okay. So we do cold, then we do hot, then we do cold, then we do hot.
Okay.
Because if we can constrict vessels, blood vessels, when we put thermo on it, hot on it, we get a bigger vasodilation, more blood flow than just putting a heat pack on it. Okay. If you chill it first, the heat pack will create a greater vasodilation. Okay. Anyway, that's a little bit different than what you asked me, but it was good that I threw it in there. I feel better about myself telling you that. Okay. Cryotherapy after.
Yep.
Okay. On the spot. The sooner the better. Okay. If we want to talk about maybe even before that, I would go through a stretching routine.
Okay.
So not the lacrosse ball, not the myofascial release. That's all released. Okay. But we do want to stretch. And in some ways, not the things that we talked about that needed to be stretched and released. There's certain muscle groups. Okay. Now you got me talking. Okay. Around the early to mid 80s, okay, we looked at the human body, the musculoskeletal system in particular, as a series of levers and fulcrums, and what moved the levers on the fulcrum's a joint, right? The lever. Okay. So what moved those were the muscles, and there were primary movers and secondary movers. That was it. That's how we looked at it.
Yeah.
And we made that conversation about the hamstrings kicking in, secondary mover doing more work because the primary mover, the glute wasn't firing.
Yep.
Okay. Just want to test
I
you.
got it.
All right. You got it. Tell them enough times, they get it, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, okay. A doctor by the name of Vladimir Janda, okay, European doctor who had an affliction of polio. And because of his own affliction, he started studying the human body. He was an MD. And he realized a couple things. One, he realized that, like we talked about before, if you do the same things over and over again, repetitive movement, you're going to compensation. Compensation is going to create the dysfunction. That's from Janda. Okay. What he also realized was that besides having primary movers and secondary movers, there are muscle groups that were stabilizers. Okay. This goes back to the eccentric load stuff that I was talking about, that right before you took off, right before you turn, you slow down. Well, there's muscle groups that are firing to stabilize joints so that you can have that eccentric load followed by the concentric load. Okay. But the other thing that Janda came up with is that there are muscle groups that are prone to tightness, and there's other muscle groups that are prone to weakness.
Okay.
So a muscle group that's prone to tightness is never going to be weak, and a muscle group that's prone to weakness is never going to be tight. Goes back to the hip flexor glute.
Yep.
The hip flexor group prone to tightness.
Yep.
Okay. The glute prone to weakness.
Yep.
Okay. So, got to stop. What did you ask me initially where I got on this roll?
Recovery.
Yes. Okay. So we did all the releases of the tight groups and we activated the weak groups. So now we have these basically efficient muscle systems, that are all warmed up and juiced up.
Yeah.
And now would be a really good time to stretch them again.
Okay.
Okay. Because what's going to happen is as soon as you stop moving, okay, they're going to start tightening up.
Okay.
Okay. And it's much easier to stretch a muscle group that's warmed up than a cold muscle group. There's even people like me out there that say, don't even bother stretching a cold muscle because it's not doing anything. It's not doing much, but it might be doing something. Okay.
Yeah.
It might be better than nothing. Okay. But so I would start with the stretching routine. Okay. And then follow that by the cryotherapy, which is the ice. And then if we want to go further down this rabbit hole, now we start talking about nutrition. Okay. Normally we would say that there was a 35-minute, maybe 35 to 45-minute protein carbo load. So all of this energy depletion that you created by playing your sport, we want to get that back in. We want to get the carbs and the proteins back in. Carbs for energy, protein to rebuild muscle tissue.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have a window of where your body will absorb most of the carbs and protein. The more current research is saying that probably goes up to a couple of hours, okay, but not as efficient. The longer you wait, the less efficient it is to absorb. So let's throw that in there, okay? So we got the stretching, we got the cryotherapy, now we got the protein carbo load.
I see a lot of, again, elite athletes now that are using compression, trouser compression to sort of, what does that do?
Well, so blood's going to pool and gravity's going to pull it down.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know about you, but at 72, when I take long flights now, okay, I use compression socks.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a reason why. Okay, the swelling doesn't go up, it goes down. Okay. So you're trying to push that back up. So there's units out there, there's Normatec, there's all these compression. What you really want is what we call intermittent compression. Okay. So there's these sleeves, that come on, they fill up with air basically, and it's graduated. Okay. So it's further down on the limb, it's tighter, and then it moves up. Okay. And the idea, and it goes on and then off, on, off. So it's a pumping thing, trying to get blood back to the heart. And what we're doing is, you probably heard, especially in the old days, about lactic acid, which is a byproduct of creating the energy.
Yeah.
Okay? And that your muscle soreness was lactic acid buildup. That's not true.
Old wives' tale.
All right. But it's good after to get rid of that lactic acid. I'm not saying that, but that muscle soreness that you created was more the micro tearing of the myofibrils that we were talking about before. Okay. So a lot of times people are doing the right thing, but
for the wrong reasons.
Okay. So we're trying to get everybody to think right, so that you'll do it right if you can think it right. Okay. Ultimately, a lot of people believe in this, and I would be hard pressed to say no. I personally don't like doing it to myself, but this is one of those things as an athletic trainer that you say, do as I say, not as I do. Okay. and it's cold water plunge.
Yeah.
I
Andy
mean,
Murray swears by
you
it.
can't argue with there are enough people out there that are saying, I feel revitalized. I just don't like cold.
Hmm.
That's why I live in Southern California. Okay. Okay. If it's 48, man, we're angry.
This is true. This is true. So talking about Southern California, something I'm seeing a lot of around here is people walking backwards.
Yeah.
Why?
Once again, one of the key things is this hip flexor tightness, shutting off the neural drive to the glute. If you're walking backwards, you're firing those muscles that are in the posterior side of your body.
Okay.
And, like you talking earlier about weight training, how many times have you looked at people that are always doing pushing exercise? They don't do enough pulling exercises. In my world, for every pushing exercise that you do, you need to do 3 pulling exercises.
Okay.
Okay. So if I do a bench press, I need to do three different exercises that I'm pulling to activate and build the back muscles up. Otherwise, I'm doing this to my body.
Okay.
Well, it's the same thing with walking backwards. Okay. You're going against everything else that you've done, because most of what you do in sports is, once again, in the transverse plane, going forward and twisting, accelerating, decelerating. Okay. There are backward movements, but most of the time you're on attack.
Yeah.
Okay. Even defensively. Okay. And so I don't know who came up with the start of it. It wasn't me, unfortunately. I wish I could claim, because it's bright. It's a smart move to be doing reverse walking.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. So I think I just want to talk about what we're going to be doing with this podcast over the coming months. And I think that with the next episode, we really want to focus on tennis, but really just to sort of tease that out a little bit, could you just talk a little bit about what are the common injuries of tennis, and then compare that to pickleball, which is the same sport, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, it's not the same sport. I mean, there's a ball and something to hit it with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's not a new. I mean, there's a badminton. You know what I mean? There's what was the sport that everybody was
Padel.
playing in a box? You go in a box with
padel.
a little.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is nothing new, but pickleball is different. There's no giving that paddle.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's talk about tennis first, and then we'll move over.
No, we'll get with paddle. I just want to try
All right.
I just want to tease out the different types of common injuries, and they're not common to pickleball or tennis. They're very different injuries.
Well, you probably in pickleball, you're going to have all the tennis injuries plus some.
Are we on to annuities again?
Yeah. The orthopods love pickleball, man. It's an annuity for Don't be an annuity. That should be like a T-shirt. Okay. Do the right thing. One of the biggest problems in pickleball is what we call a TFC. Okay. A TFC stands for trifibrocartilage. Okay. Pretty easy to decipher. Your Latin tri means 3.
Yeah.
Okay. And cartilage is cartilage. So let's talk about cartilage for a second, because we really haven't touched on that. And when I talk about trying to explain cartilage to people, the easiest way they grasp it is the end of the chicken bone. Okay. When I have you look at the end of a chicken bone, it's a nice white Teflon looking surface. That's not bone.
Okay.
That's cartilage. Now, there's different types of cartilage. There's what we call fibrocartilage. So when someone tells you they tore the cartilage in their knee, that they tore their meniscus,
Yeah.
they're talking about a fibrocartilaginous disc.
Okay.
When someone says that they herniated the disc in their back, that's fibrocartilage.
Okay.
But when we talk about the end of the chicken bone, the end of our bones,
Yeah.
we're talking about hyaline cartilage or articulating cartilage. It's a different type of cartilage, but it's cartilage. One of the reasons why I think it's nice and white is because it doesn't get a good blood flow to it. If it doesn't get a good blood flow to it, it's not going to heal. So what happens to that hyaline or articulating cartilage? Several things can happen. It can fracture. It can wear away. It can pit. Okay.
Yeah.
You can have osteochondral lesions. You can have like a dent in it, a defect in it. Okay. And all these things are not a little problem, a huge problem, because they don't heal. And that's basically what we call osteoarthritis, okay, or the beginnings of the osteoarthritis.
But that's the same for tennis and pickleball.
All sports. Okay.
Okay.
I'm laying the groundwork. I'm getting there. Okay.
As always.
So the trifibrocartilage is a combination of soft tissue, ligaments, and cartilage. Okay. But I wanted to explain that cartilage doesn't heal.
Okay.
So this, or at least not well. Okay. I mean, they're trying to do stem cells and all these things. I mean, they've been trying since the beginning of time. Okay. And we're still not there yet. So this particular injury is bad, okay, because the trifibrocartilage, the TFC, okay, that's why we say TFC, it's easier to say. That area is right here in the triangle in your wrist, and it holds these bones together, your ulna to these carpal bones, the smaller bones in your hand, and it provides stability in your wrist. And if you don't have stability in your wrist, it's pretty hard to play pickleball. Okay. But it's also hard almost to do anything else. Okay. You don't want to shake hands with somebody.
Okay.
It hurts.
Okay.
Okay.
I think the Queen of England used to talk about this. She shook so many people's hands that
it could happen that way.
Yeah.
Actually, it could happen that way, believe it or not. It can happen a lot of different ways. It happened to me, a baseball player I met, okay, in the Boston Celtic locker room. He played for the Boston Red Sox, so I didn't particularly care for him. Okay, you know, he was a good, nice guy actually, but I didn't like the team. Okay, because I'm a New York, LA guy.
Yeah.
We don't like anything Boston. We don't even like little CYO girls soccer teams. Okay? We want to see them lose too. Okay, and I'm not kidding. Okay. He shook my hand. And he was a baseball player. So these guys have huge forearms, huge grips. I mean, it's a baseball. And in your world, it's cricket, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I felt a pop.
Yeah.
And it took me a year, okay, to get better. Okay. So in pickleball, it may not necessarily pop like that, but what'll happen is they'll get micro tears. They'll get these small tears in the TFC. And over time, the little tear becomes a bigger tear, and it becomes a bigger tear until it's a complete tear. And now you have an unstable wrist, and you have these small bones moving around, and they're not supposed to move around. Okay, that's why that other tissue's there is to hold them together. And if they're moving around, what happens with a joint that moves more than it's supposed to move, it wears out.
Okay.
And when I mean it wears out, the cartilage wears out, which means now you have an arthritic joint.
Okay.
Okay. And that's really hard, to deal with, especially as you get older. So that's one of the things that's kind of specific to pickleball. I'm sure tennis players have gotten it, but it seems like it's coming in like rages in the pickleball community. The other thing that's kind of specific to pickleball, once again, we've seen it in other sports, but usually we see it from contact, is what's called a de Quervain's syndrome. I know I'm throwing a lot of cool words out to you, and you're going to be really good at a cocktail party. Okay, you know what a de Quervain syndrome is, right? So de Quervain's is if you look at my, I told you all these muscles that control the hand all start up at the elbow. Well, as they come down here, you can see these tendons coming out of here, okay, and coming down here, operate my thumb, right? So right here, there's sort of a tunnel that these tendons come out, and usually it happens from a direct blow.
Okay.
So let's say you have a space there, okay, that these travel through, and that space is supposed to be this big, but now it's inflamed.
Okay.
Now it's only that big.
Yeah.
But the same size structures have to pass through there.
Yeah.
Okay. And they can't, okay, because it's swollen in there, it's inflamed, okay, and it affects, okay, your ability to grip,
okay,
and to use your thumb. What makes us human is our thumb.
Opposable
you can't
thumb.
do anything. You can't pick up a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You know, which is a problem. In your case, a pint.
Yes.
Of beer. Okay. I'm Italian. I said wine, but you know, so you can't use your thumb. It's a problem. Okay. Not just playing pickleball, but suppose you got to work.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you can't shake hands with anybody. You can't open the car door. The old cars, you know, we had to push the button in, right? Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? So de Quervain's is an issue. Carpal tunnel is an issue. Like, so carpal tunnel, you've probably heard of it, okay? A lot of people that type a lot, you're on your computer a lot, they get carpal tunnel. Once again, all the muscles that operate the wrists and the hand, the fingers, all start up here. Well, to get from here to there, okay, they have to go through different areas.
Yeah.
And so there's a tunnel that's underneath these two bones, okay? And there's a ligament here they call the transcarpal ligament. And so under that ligament, there's like a space where not only these tendons pass through, but the median nerve passes through. So if you look at my hand, this is ulnar nerve, this is radial nerve, okay? Ulnar nerve, radial nerve. The long fingers are the median nerve. So you're getting compression on that nerve. What happens is you get numbness and tingling in your hand, you're losing strength, okay? Back to the de Quervain's, there's something that's called the Finkelstein test. You put your thumb in the palm of your hand, you do this, and you do that, up and down. And usually the doctor will put his hand over here, and sometimes you can feel the tendons grinding, okay? Because the space isn't there for them to glide through. They grind there. It's painful, okay? So if somebody has a positive Finkelstein test, you got to immobilize them. Immobilize, TFC. Immobilize, de Quervain's. Immobilize, sometimes surgery, okay, for these things. Okay? Now you immobilize someone, now you create a whole bunch of other problems, okay? You know, you're stopping this from getting worse, but now you're weakening all the other structures because they're not moving, they're not firing. When we immobilize something, it's something like we atrophy at about 3% a day, okay? So now you're getting weaker, okay? Now you feel better, you want to come back to where you were before, but you can't. Okay, because now you're not strong enough. Okay, so now you got to start back here and slowly work your way back to where you were. Otherwise, you're just going to start all over the process all over again. 90% recurrence rate, like I told you.
Thank you, Gary. On our next episode, we're going to focus on tennis, my favorite sport. And Gary's going to share with us how to better warm up, what's a better recovery program so that we can avoid the common injuries of tennis. And I'm sure that Gary's going to share with us what those common injuries are so that we will do a better warm up and recovery.